Depending on how often you travel, being a member of multiple airline loyalty programs can make it challenging to redeem any hard-earned points and miles. Sometimes points can only be used for certain flights, and they're usually only applied to just part of the airfare. However, the traveller in today's flight review was determined to finally put their Air France KLM Flying Blue points to good use after accumulating them over the past 4 years. This is what prompted them to book a one-way flight from Vancouver to London via Seattle. This review will examine the long-haul portion of the journey, a Virgin Atlantic Boeing 787-9 service from Seattle to London in economy class. The flight was overall quite pleasant, but had its fair share of issues and quirks. So if you're interested in finding out more about the flight experience with this UK carrier, we hope you'll keep watching. First, let's go over some background on the flight booking. To get to the actual flight, perhaps starting from the boarding process, please feel free to skip ahead to this point in the video. As mentioned, this flight was booked using Flying Blue miles. The Flying Blue program is mainly used by Air France and KLM, but also Kenya Airways and a few smaller airlines. Additionally, members of this program can earn miles by flying on eligible flights operated by SkyTeam member airlines. In this situation, our traveller redeemed 34,500 miles to fly one way from Vancouver to London via Seattle. Taxes and surcharges paid in addition to the miles came to $156 Canadian, which equates to about $117 at the time of this video's production. This was our travellers' second attempt in redeeming their miles for this particular trip. The first attempt saw the loyalty program deduct their points and issue a reservation booking code, but apparently no actual e-ticket was issued. This problem was only discovered after it was noticed that one leg of the flight had completely disappeared. Flying Blue customer service couldn't explain how the error happened, and so they ended up refunding points and instructing our traveller to book the flight all over again. It's extremely fortunate the error was noticed on time, but if it hadn't been, then it could have been a really messy situation at the airport on the day of departure. But moving on to the day of the flight, our traveller first flew from Vancouver with Delta Airlines, or a Delta Connection service operated by SkyWest Airlines to be more precise. Unfortunately, our traveller experienced some issues checking in for the first flight. They had been issued a boarding pass, but with cryptic error messages that popped up afterwards. Clearly, Delta's reservation system was having some issues, and even the gate agent at Vancouver International Airport was unable to solve the problem. However, being a sharp and experienced problem solver, the Delta check-in and gate agent, whose name was Sandy, fixed things up and directed our traveller to continue airside. Sandy stayed on the phone with Delta Airlines and even offered to put our traveller on an earlier flight to Seattle since there was enough time. The connection could have been a tight one, with a transfer time of only 1 hour. Of course, considering the fact that major Canadian airports have US customs pre-clearance, immigration wouldn't be an issue transferring through Seattle. However, there was definitely some nervousness due to an unfamiliarity with Seattle-Tacoma, or SeaTac, airport, and the fact that terminals were separated by shuttle train. In the end, gate agent extraordinaire Sandy worked her magic and put our traveller on the earlier Delta service to Seattle, eventually providing an additional 3 hours of connection time. Despite an unfamiliarity with SeaTac, it was nice that Virgin Atlantic had published a quick reference guide for connecting from a Delta flight to its VS106 service. Additionally, there were some YouTube videos of people taking the people movers between terminals that helped to clear things up. Getting off our Delta Connection Embraer E175 flight from Vancouver, transferring from Seattle's B concourse to S concourse was extremely smooth. This required walking to the end of the B concourse, descending down 2 escalators, and taking the people mover to the S concourse. The S gates exist at a satellite building away from the main terminal. This relatively small facility appears to mainly serve long-haul intercontinental flights and can be covered on foot end-to-end in less than 5 minutes. As far as this building is concerned, seating and charging stations were plentiful, while toilets and drinking fountain facilities were easily accessible. It should also be noted that connecting to the airport's Wi-Fi was extremely easy, with no annoying steps for registration required. Soon enough, it was time to board the aircraft. The flight would be operated by an 8-year-old Boeing 787-9 registered Golf Victor Oscar Oscar Hotel, nicknamed Mischief. Boarding was extremely fast, with gate agents being extremely friendly and enthusiastic with their announcements. Indeed, the speed of the boarding gave a strong indication of a less than full flight. Stepping on board, we headed back to row 63 and seat 63K. Apparently, our traveller would be one of the few passengers that would be seated in this section. Once boarding was complete, it's estimated that at least in the rear economy section, the load factor was around 40 to 50%. In fact, our flight reviewer had the row of 3 seats to themselves, with only one person in the row in front and no one assigned a seat in the row behind. On that note, let's move on to the 787 economy class seat we would be spending 9 hours in. As a first-time traveller with Virgin Atlantic, it was interesting to our flight reviewer that the airline really leaned into its red theme and branding. Seats are a mix of bold red and a brownish maroon colour, while the 787's LEDs were most often configured to be a deep purple colour. Getting seated, the seat pitch was more than enough to feel comfortable. The vertically adjustable headrests are big and plush and have non-adjustable wings that jut out on each side. Our flight reviewer found these to be a bit much and would have preferred something a little simpler. For our traveller, the size of the headrest forced their head to be too forward than was comfortable, as they would have preferred to tilt their head back a little. Seat recline was decent and there was nothing too special about the tray table. Like many airlines these days, the seats come with a little metal nub for hanging coats and other articles of clothing. Finally, seats come with seat back pockets complete with an emergency card, duty-free shopping catalogue and in-flight magazine. As our reviewer had experienced with other airlines, the IFE box was placed under the seat. The one on this flight consumed about a quarter of the underseat area at the window seat. This didn't seem to be an issue for the aisle seat, but in our cluster, the window and centre seats both had these boxes. While this would normally be less than ideal for someone who wanted to keep their laptop bag close by, the empty adjacent seats meant that there was plenty of room to store bags and stretch out. The in-flight entertainment system appeared to be fairly modern and responded quickly to touch. While the screens aren't the largest, they are bright and of good quality. These systems also come fitted with a USB-A port and a single-prong headphone jack. In our experience, many modern systems can tilt to compensate for seat recline. However, the screens on this aircraft lacked this feature. For the content held within the IFE, the choice of movies to television shows to games was extremely diverse. To our reviewer's surprise, it was nice that passengers could provide feedback on whether they enjoyed a show or not, ultimately feeding into a calculated average satisfaction score. Unfortunately, the moving map feature, named the Sky Map, wasn't functioning for the first portion of the flight. Unaware of when exactly it became functional, our reviewer did get a chance to check it out during the last 35 minutes of the flight. Another glitch that was discovered concerned a single album that our reviewer tried to listen to, as it was clearly not what it was labelled to be. But other than our traveller not being able to listen to some Billie Holiday, all other albums that were played in the IFE seemed to be correctly labelled. There are two things that could be said about the USB port. The first is that it's quite interesting that this port is apparently not just for charging. Going through the IFE menu, it looks like there's an option for passengers to connect USB drives to play content on the in-flight system. Unfortunately, without any USB drive in their possession, our reviewer was unable to test this feature. The second point about this USB port is the fact that sometime after reaching cruising altitude, device charging seemed to stop. While on the ground and shortly after takeoff, charging appeared to work fine, until it didn't. To make sure it wasn't just their port or their cable, our reviewer tested the neighbouring IFE and was able to charge their phone using their power bank. While the few non-functioning features detracted from the in-flight experience, there was a single glitch that was actually a great benefit to our reviewer and their fellow passengers: free Wi-Fi. Connecting to the Virgin Atlantic network, the browser automatically opened to the airline's page. After clicking on Connect, the expectation was that it would provide a page with different plans and steps to take payment. It looked like the system was trying to take passengers to another page which never actually loaded. Despite this, our reviewer's social media and email notifications came flooding in, proving that they were indeed connected to the World Wide Web. We're not sure if this wonderful little glitch was the result of a specific operating system or device, but our reviewer was using an iPhone to connect and also managed to connect for free with their Apple MacBook. To confirm that was indeed a glitch and not some promotion, we asked a flight attendant about it. The one that we approached confirmed that the service was supposed to require payment, and upon hearing the news told our reviewer that they lucked out and to enjoy the glitch. Thus, our reviewer found themselves connected throughout the entire 9-hour flight, posting images of their journey as it progressed. Moving on, the in-flight service began with a small snack and a beverage service 20 minutes after takeoff. This consisted of a package of pretzel snacks and a drink. The main meal came about an hour later. Curious to see how the airline handled special requests, our traveller pre-selected the Asian vegetarian option as part of their booking. Having fallen asleep after reaching cruising altitude, our reviewer woke up to find their special meal in a box sitting on the tray in front of them. As for the rest of the cabin, flight attendants at this point had just begun the general meal service, which consisted of a chicken option and a vegetarian pasta option. As for the special pre-selected meal, it consisted of rice with steamed cauliflower with curry spices, okra and green lentils. Adding a little more spice, 2 slices of jalapeno peppers were placed on top of the rice. Accompanying this hot meal was a bread roll and butter, while dessert was some kind of coconut pudding jelly dish topped with small bits of pineapple. Everything was delicious, although the hot meal came fairly bland. In this case, the lack of saltiness seemed to be intentional and was easily fixed with a packet of salt that came with the cutlery. A few hours after this, sometime during the middle of the flight, crews came through the cabin to offer water or orange juice. Then, about 90 minutes before landing, passengers were served breakfast. Coming in small boxes, this consisted of a very thick and rich yogurt, a pastry, pain au chocolat to be precise, and a blueberry granola cookie product. The yogurt was quite nice, and the granola cookie product wasn't too bad either. However, having been refrigerated, the pastry was cold and stiff, which made it quite unpleasant to bite into. Another thing our reviewer wanted to mention was their selection of a window seat and the issues that came with it. The traveller in this review enjoys taking photographs out the window and was excited to do the same for this trip. Thus, there was a small dilemma for this trip. Knowing that it was a red-eye flight over the Arctic Circle during the winter, there would have been a chance to capture the northern lights out of the left-hand windows of the plane. However, having had a few landings at Heathrow where the aircraft came from the east and flew over the city, our reviewer thought they might catch central London out to the right side as the aircraft landed. So, having already successfully captured the northern lights twice now, our reviewer chose to try and get some aerial shots of central London this time. Unfortunately, neither of these options would turn out to be possible. As the cabin lights were dimmed for passengers to sleep, it was noticed that the Dreamliner's windows were locked to be black overnight. This would have killed any chances of getting a good shot of Aurora Borealis in low-light conditions. And then, over at our reviewer's right side window, ice crystals had formed between the panes, severely obstructing any view. Ultimately, however, this wouldn't have mattered, since low cloud prevented any good view of central London below. Wrapping up our review, our traveller came into this flight really excited to fly with Virgin Atlantic and really wanted to like the flight. Overall, the flight was fairly enjoyable, but the number of glitches and issues certainly detracted from the experience. Well, except for the glitch of free Wi-Fi. The headrest was a little bulkier than would have been preferred, and it might actually have been more comfortable without it. Many of the glitches and issues raised were overall quite minor and by no means ruined the experience. However, we feel it's necessary to bring up all of these details to provide a comprehensive flight review. Looking back at the 9-hour flight, it's clear that the airline puts a good amount of energy into solid customer service and pleasant interactions. Flight attendants were warm, courteous, and performed their jobs well, and so we would wager to say that most passengers felt well taken care of throughout their flight. This was certainly made easier by the light load factor of the service. But that's it for our transatlantic economy class review with Virgin Atlantic. Have you flown with Virgin Atlantic before? Where did you go and on which aircraft? Share your own experience of flying with the airline by leaving a comment. Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles every week. If you're looking for the latest aviation news and insights, visit simpleflying.com.